Robotaxis are no longer a concept for the future. They are operating on our streets today. Waymo is now facilitating over 450,000 paid rides per week and scaling its footprint rapidly across major metros. Simultaneously, Tesla has pivoted its entire enterprise toward autonomy, beginning its first unsupervised rides in Austin. We are rapidly crossing the threshold where autonomous vehicles are safer and more reliable than a human driver. In this video, we're going to look at the staggering economics driving these multi-billion-dollar bets and why the math suggests that the mobility market will undergo a fundamental transformation. To understand the magnitude of the shift ahead, we have to look at the baseline we started from. At the turn of the 20th century, personal mobility was an expensive luxury. In today's inflation-adjusted dollars, a horse and carriage cost between $5 and $10 per mile. Although horses were relatively cheap to buy, as a biological engine, a horse requires fuel and maintenance 24/7, regardless of whether it's moving. When you factor in a hard biological ceiling of 20 miles of travel per day, the system was fundamentally limited by inefficiency. The disruption began in 1908 with the introduction of the Ford Model T. But the true economic pivot occurred in 1913, when Henry Ford launched the first moving assembly line. By moving from manual craftsmanship to mechanical mass production, Ford shattered the cost of movement. By the mid-1920s, the cost per mile had collapsed tenfold, dropping to roughly 80 cents to $1 in today's currency. However, since that initial disruption, the cost per mile has stayed remarkably flat for 100 years. While cars have become significantly safer, more comfortable, and more performant, the fundamental cost of moving a person from point A to point B hasn't changed. By comparison, looking at data from the Bureau of Transportation, we can see that the costs for air travel have declined sharply over the past 30 years. Why did cars stop getting cheaper? The answer lies in part on how we use, or rather don't use, these machines. The average US household owns 1.8 cars. These are $40,000 pieces of complex engineering that sit parked and idle for more than 95% of their lives. Think about that in the context of other expensive assets. Your smartphone is likely utilized throughout your entire waking day. Your primary residence provides utility 24/7. Even vacation homes, which were historically underutilized, have seen a massive spike in efficiency through platforms like Airbnb. The only asset in your life with worse utilization than your car might be your power tools, and those don't cost $40,000. In any other sector of the economy, an asset with a less than 5% utilization rate would be viewed as a catastrophic misallocation of capital. Yet, for most of us, the car remains a necessity. We accept this inefficiency because of what we call the latency problem. We don't pay for the car just to move. We pay for its readiness. We pay for the ability to leave our house at a moment's notice without waiting. Until now, the only way to solve for latency was personal ownership. But as autonomous AI driving systems mature, they promise to solve the latency problem through network scale, effectively decoupling mobility from ownership. To see the immense cost reduction potential, we have to look at the cost components that make up the total cost of ownership of an average midsize car today. First, there is the acquisition and financing costs, resulting in depreciation and loan payments, depending on the purchase price of the car. Then there are the energy costs, insurance, maintenance and repairs, and taxes, license, and registration fees, summing up to around the 82 cents per mile we saw before. But that's not the complete picture. On top is an uncompensated role you unknowingly hired yourself into. You must shoulder the cognitive load of its upkeep, tracking maintenance schedules, and the constant logistical dance of refueling or charging. The value of this lost time is hard to quantify, so we will not include it in the chart. Further, you must bear the fees for parking and the time and energy spent finding a free parking spot, which according to a 2017 INRIX study results in an additional $3,000 per year on average. corresponding to roughly 20 cents per mile. And finally, you are the driver. For the 5% of the time the asset is actually in use, you are performing a high-stakes manual task that pays you $0. The average American spends around 360 hours every year behind the wheel. That is 9 full work weeks, a heavy tax on your productivity and your life. If we take the wage of the driver into account, the total effective cost per mile exceeds $3 for the average American. The car manufacturers are well aware of these inefficiencies. In fact, they've built their entire marketing machine to distract you from them. Because a 5% utility asset is a rational nightmare, they stopped selling you transportation and started selling you a status symbol. They pack vehicles with unnecessary but cool features: ambient lighting, complex air suspensions, and oversized touchscreens. Features that look great in a showroom but add very little value to your 60-minute commute. But these aren't just toys, they are high margin failure points. Legacy car manufacturers don't make their real profits when they sell you the car. They make them when these complex systems fail. The service and parts segment typically carries margins 3 to 4 times higher than the vehicle sale itself. They sell you the cool features to get you in the door, knowing that every sensor and motorized handle is a future high margin repair. They rely on having an operational fleet that breaks down constantly and generates profits from high margin spare parts. A century ago, we witnessed the horse to horsepower pivot. Now, we believe the personal car is entering the same terminal phase, transitioning from a logistical necessity to an expensive, inefficient hobby. In traditional ride hailing, the driver accounts for nearly 70% of the cost. By removing the human driver, we move from a variable labor expense to a fixed software expense, a model that is infinitely scalable. And unlike the human driver who gets tired and is prone to error, the AI driver can operate 24/7. The parking-related costs are also eliminated, as we don't need to look for a parking spot anymore. We just get dropped off exactly where we need to go. But the disruption isn't just coming from the absence of the driver and the parking needs, it's the optimization of the machine. Traditional cars are over-engineered for peak performance, but under-engineered for endurance. A robotaxi, like the upcoming Tesla Cybercab, flips this. By moving to a dedicated autonomous platform, every component is designed for maximum utilization and lifespan. By removing human-centric hardware, like steering wheels, pedals, and complex dashboards, and using a simplified two-seater frame, the production cost and therefore depreciation expenses drop dramatically. Furthermore, by relying on a camera-only self-driving system, there is virtually no additional hardware cost to unlock autonomy. This vision-based approach eliminates expensive LiDAR and radar sensors, which can add tens of thousands of dollars to a vehicle's bill of materials. The production cost savings are then massively amplified by the much higher utilization rate. At scale, we expect robotaxis to operate around the clock and average 14 hours of operation per day. That accounts for peaks and troughs in demand and the time required for charging and maintenance during off-peak hours. At a utilization of almost 60%, robotaxis will have a 12 times higher utilization rate than personal cars today and will therefore be much more cost-effective. Further, let's talk about maintenance and repairs. A typical modern gas engine has over 1,000 moving parts: piston, valves, timing belts, and complex multi-speed transmissions. An EV drivetrain has about 20. There is no engine oil to change, no transmission fluid to flush, and no exhaust system to rust. By optimizing for autonomy, we also eliminate the aggressive braking and acceleration of human drivers, extending tire and brake life. Maintenance isn't just cheaper, it's predictable. Then there's the insurance. Today, you pay for your neighbor's bad driving. But a robotaxi fleet is data rich. If a vehicle is 10 times safer than a human driver, the risk premium collapses. Already today, Lemonade is offering up to a 50% discount on premiums when Tesla's full self-driving system is engaged. Once the self-driving systems mature, insurance costs will likely turn towards zero. Finally, consider the energy advantage. These fleets can buy industrial-scale electricity, not retail gas. While a gas car struggles with efficiency in traffic, an optimized EV can travel 5 to 6 miles per kilowatt hour. At industrial rates, the energy cost for a 10-mile trip drops from more than $1 in gasoline to roughly 27 cents. There are also further savings from taxes and license and registration fees due to economies of scale. However, we must add costs for teleoperation, customer service, and infrastructure. At scale, and once the AI driving systems are mature, teleoperation costs should be minimal, as robotaxis will require assistance only in very rare edge cases. Infrastructure, on the other hand, will stay more relevant. Robotaxis require large depots for charging, maintenance, cleaning, and storage during off-peak hours. Our bottom-up cost analysis reveals that the Tesla Cybercab can operate at scale for just 19 cents per mile. Even when accounting for 40% deadheading, the miles traveled empty to reach the next passenger, the fully burdened cost only rises to 32 cents. We believe that costs could drop even further in the long term, dropping to as little as 22 cents per mile in dense urban areas with little downtime and deadheading between rides. Compare that to the $1 per mile you currently pay to own, park, and maintain a personal vehicle. That represents a 69% drop in raw costs. More profoundly, when we account for the wage costs of the driver, the effective cost per mile drops by over 90%. This tenfold reduction mirrors the seismic shift from horse carriages to automobiles we saw a century ago. In fact, the projected costs are so low that robotaxis won't just disrupt the ride-hailing market. They will tackle the entire transportation sector, a market orders of magnitude larger. Americans currently spend roughly 8% of their total income, or $1.7 trillion every year, on transport-related expenditures that could, in theory, be entirely replaced by autonomous fleets. To put that in perspective, that is many times larger than the value of the US smartphone market, valued at approximately $100 billion. This is where the economics become truly staggering. Suppose robotaxi rides are offered at $1 per mile, matching the current cost of personal ownership, but with one fundamental advantage. You effectively receive a private chauffeur for free. This transforms your daily commute from a high-stress task into a high-value mobile office, or simply 60 minutes of reclaimed time per day. For the operator, the proposition is even more compelling. At scale, an optimized platform like the Tesla Cybercab could recoup its production costs in as little as, wait for it, 6 months of operation. Over its useful life, the vehicle could generate 10 times its initial production costs in net profit. Picture a robotaxi autonomously leaving the assembly line and immediately entering service. It's no longer a depreciating product, it's a profit engine, a high-yield asset that begins generating cash flow the moment its wheels touch the pavement. Given the immense profit potential and the scale of the transportation market, we believe we will see millions of robotaxis operating on the road, steadily displacing manually driven cars. So, what does it all mean? From an economic perspective, personal management of vehicle maintenance, charging, and parking is an irrational allocation of time. These logistics are far more cost-effective when handled at scale by specialized fleet operators. We therefore believe we are entering the era of mobility as a service. Once autonomous fleets are ubiquitous, they will finally collapse the latency that currently makes car ownership feel mandatory. When a ride is consistently available at your fingertips in under 3 minutes, the psychological and financial burden of buying a car simply evaporates. In fact, given their cost advantage, robotaxis are positioned to displace broad segments of traditional public transport entirely. We also anticipate the rise of sponsored mobility. Imagine a world where your ride to a restaurant, wellness center, or theme park is free, subsidized by the destination in exchange for your patronage. In this model, the fare is replaced by a paid promotion on your smartphone or the vehicle's internal screens. The physical impact on our cities will be profound. Urban centers will begin to breathe again, as massive surface parking lots are reclaimed and transformed into public parks or housing. But this transition will be a graveyard for legacy business models. Car rentals will vanish, and the multi-billion-dollar business-to-customer insurance market will effectively cease to exist, as liability shifts from the individual driver to the fleet operator. For automakers, the choice is existential. Evolve or become a niche luxury relic. In a robotaxi world, operational efficiency is the most important metric. When you aren't the one behind the wheel, you likely won't care about the badge on the hood or cool status features. You will care about cleanliness, reliability, and cost. The environment favors durability over brand equity. A world focused on utility doesn't need hundreds of car brands. Manufacturers that haven't mastered EV platforms, which offer significantly lower maintenance costs and longer lifespans, may find their business models obsolete, almost overnight. Adding insult to injury, given the much higher utilization of robotaxis, far fewer cars will be required overall. We estimate that every robotaxi could replace 4 to 5 traditional cars, shrinking the total sales market drastically. Given the fragmented landscape of car manufacturers today, many car brands will likely not survive the transition. To be clear, we won't hit these rock-bottom price points tomorrow. Massive R&D costs must be amortized, infrastructure must be built, and AI systems must be trained on billions of miles to reach the many nines reliability required. Today's robotaxis are still restricted to geofenced zones, highly mapped urban environments where the AI is operating within known parameters. It will take many years to master every complex intersection, irregular train crossing, and unpredictable drop-off point, contrary to what certain individuals may want you to believe. Furthermore, heavy rain, thick fog, and snow remain the ultimate edge cases that current self-driving systems have yet to fully master. As these fleets scale, interactions with human drivers will also inevitably lead to accidents, forcing a reckoning in regulatory frameworks and a total overhaul of how we assign liability. So, you still have time to amortize your car, but looking at the math and the momentum, it may very well be your last. Thanks for watching. You can find our detailed written report on the economics of robotaxis at laniakearesearch.com. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to join us for more financial deep dives into the technologies that change the world.